The stars looked wrong. That was the first thing I noticed when the horizon crossed into the outer Federation sectors. Not brighter, not darker. Wrong. Constellations drifted slightly out of position against the observation glass, while distant systems flickered across the navigation displays like the ship was struggling to decide where they truly belonged. At first glance, most pilots probably wouldn't have noticed it. Federation star charts still aligned. Trade lanes remained open. Patrol routes continued operating normally, but the deeper the horizon drifted into the sector, the more space itself seemed unsettled, almost uncertain. I remember sitting quietly inside the cockpit, watching blue-white stars slide slowly past the viewport, while the horizon adjusted her course on her own. She did that sometimes near unstable regions. Tiny corrections, subtle movements, like the ship could feel distortions long before instruments confirmed them. The Federation called the region Sector 14 Gamma. Most civilian navigators simply called it the Silent Sector. Strange name for a place that once carried some of the busiest exploration routes in mapped space. Years earlier, Federation science vessels crossed through these systems daily. Deep space observatories, research stations, long-range patrol groups. Then ships started disappearing. Not destroyed, not attacked, just gone. No debris fields, no distress calls. Entire crews erased from known space without explanation. Naturally, the rumors spread quickly. Some blamed Romulan cloaking operations. Others feared Borg reconnaissance activity near the outer territories. A few whispered about temporal distortions, subspace fractures, experimental propulsion failures. The Federation publicly dismissed most of the theories. But nervous governments always deny things they don't understand. That never changes. The horizon drifted silently through the sector for nearly 6 hours before the first transmission reached us. Weak signal. Old. Barely recognizable beneath layers of static. At first I thought it was another abandoned distress beacon. The outer sectors were full of them. Automated emergency signals still repeating decades after their crews vanished. But this transmission was different, because the voice speaking through the static sounded calm. Too calm. This is Federation science vessel Archimedes. The recording crackled heavily before stabilizing again. We've confirmed stellar displacement beyond marker 6. Static swallowed the rest briefly, then the voice returned. Stars are moving. I leaned slightly forward in the pilot's chair after hearing that, not because the statement surprised me, because of how familiar it sounded. The transmission repeated again, moments later. Same words, same calm voice, like the recording itself didn't understand the crew aboard the Archimedes had been declared missing nearly 19 years earlier. The horizon dimmed the cockpit lights automatically, while the signal continued cycling through the speakers. Outside the viewport, space remained unnaturally quiet. No trade vessels, no civilian traffic. Only distant stars scattered across endless darkness. I finally muted the transmission and glanced back toward the navigation displays. Long-range scans showed multiple Federation patrol ships operating near the sector border, holding position, watching. Even from a distance, I could recognize the difference between military caution and genuine fear. These ships weren't guarding the sector, they were avoiding it. The horizon emitted another low hum beneath my feet. Uneasy. The same sound she made near dead gateways. That bothered me more than the transmission itself. because gateways distort space gradually long before they open fully. Subtle changes first, navigation errors, signal echoes, stars appearing slightly displaced. Most civilizations mistake the symptoms for natural phenomena right until the pathways begin tearing open beneath them. I remember staring quietly through the cockpit glass after realizing that, watching distant starlight shimmer unnaturally across the darkness ahead. Funny thing about space. People think emptiness feels peaceful until they encounter a region where the universe itself no longer behaves correctly. Then silence becomes something else entirely. The horizon adjusted course again on her own, toward the deeper sectors, toward the missing ships, and somewhere far beyond the drifting stars, something ancient was beginning to wake again. Federation ships always moved with purpose. That was the first thing I noticed after crossing deeper into their territory. No drifting traffic, no chaotic merchant lanes, no scavengers chasing dying signals across forgotten systems. Everything here followed structure, order. Predictable movement patterns stretched across the stars while enormous exploration cruisers glided silently through the darkness like entire cities wrapped in silver light. Beautiful ships, hopeful ships, the kind civilizations build when they still believe the future can be understood. The horizon passed beneath one of their patrol groups nearly 3 hours after entering the sector. Massive vessels, clean hull designs, blue running lights reflecting softly across the void. Their sensors locked onto us immediately. I expected that. The horizon had a habit of confusing modern systems. No registry codes, no recognized propulsion signatures, no identifiable origin point. To most governments, that alone made us suspicious. A calm voice eventually echoed across the cockpit speakers. Unidentified vessel. You are entering a restricted Federation observation zone. Transmit registry and destination. I stayed quiet for a moment while the horizon drifted forward beneath their formation. Outside the viewport, one of the larger cruisers slowly rotated beside us, revealing long rows of illuminated windows stretching across its hull. Thousands of people on board, scientists, officers, explorers, all watching the same silent stars. Finally, I answered. Lost Horizon, civilian drifter vessel. Silence followed. Then, no Federation registry matches that designation. Not surprising. The officer hesitated slightly before continuing. You're approaching an active investigation zone. Recommend altering course immediately. Recommend. Interesting choice of words, which meant they were nervous enough to avoid provoking unknown ships this close to the silent sector. Smart. I leaned back slightly in the pilot's chair, while distant stars drifted across the observation glass. Your missing ships entered this region from here, I said quietly. Another pause, longer this time. How did you know about the disappearances? Everyone knows. Not true, but fear travels faster than governments ever realize. The Federation officer lowered his voice slightly before responding again. Several vessels disappeared investigating spatial instability beyond the sector boundary. Spatial instability. That was the phrase they were using publicly. Safer than admitting entire star systems no longer aligned correctly on their own navigation charts. safer than telling civilians that stars appeared to shift position overnight. Outside the cockpit, the larger cruiser adjusted formation slightly, while smaller escort ships maintained distance around us, watching, studying, careful. They feared Romulan infiltration here. I could tell from the patrol patterns alone. Wide defensive spacing, frequent sensor sweeps, no unnecessary transmissions. And beneath all of that, something else. Fear of the Borg. Every advanced civilization eventually develops the same expression when speaking about extinction. You see it in their posture long before you hear it in their voice. The Federation still carried hope, but it was strained now, pulled thin across too many borders, too many unknowns. The officer finally spoke again. There are also reports of unidentified vessels operating near the sector. Romulans? We can neither confirm nor deny that, which usually means yes. I almost smiled at that. Some things remain universal across every civilization. The horizon emitted another low vibration beneath the floor panels. Uneasy again. I rested my hand lightly against the console beside me. The ship felt colder now, more alert. Like she recognized something hidden beneath the stars ahead. The Federation officer interrupted my thoughts moments later. Lost horizon. If you continue toward the silent sector, understand that multiple science teams have already vanished. I know. No distress signals were recovered. I know. The officer hesitated again before quietly asking, "Then why continue?" I looked back out across the endless darkness beyond the patrol ships. The stars ahead shimmered strangely, almost breathing. Because space doesn't distort itself without reason. Silence filled the channel after that, long enough for me to imagine officers exchanging nervous glances aboard their bridge. Full. Thousands of people on board, scientists, officers, explorers, all watching the same silent stars. Finally, I answered. Lost horizon, civilian drifter vessel. Silence followed. Then, no Federation registry matches that designation. Not surprising. The officer hesitated slightly before continuing. You're approaching an active investigation zone. Recommend altering course immediately. Recommend. Interesting choice of words. Which meant they were nervous enough to avoid provoking unknown ships this close to the silent sector. Smart. I leaned back slightly in the pilot's chair, while distant stars drifted across the observation glass. Your missing ships entered this region from here, I said quietly. Another pause, longer this time. How did you know about the disappearances? Everyone knows. Not true, but fear travels faster than governments ever realize. The Federation officer lowered his voice slightly before responding again. Several vessels disappeared investigating spatial instability beyond the sector boundary. Spatial instability. That was the phrase they were using publicly. Safer than admitting entire star systems no longer aligned correctly on their own navigation charts. Safer than telling civilians that stars appeared to shift position overnight. Outside the cockpit, the larger cruiser adjusted formation slightly, while smaller escort ships maintained distance around us, watching, studying, careful. They feared Romulan infiltration here. I could tell from the patrol patterns alone. Wide defensive spacing, frequent sensor sweeps, no unnecessary transmissions. And beneath all of that, something else. Fear of the Borg. Every advanced civilization eventually develops the same expression when speaking about extinction. You see it in their posture long before you hear it in their voice. The Federation still carried hope, but it was strained now, pulled thin across too many borders, too many unknowns. The officer finally spoke again. There are also reports of unidentified vessels operating near the sector. Romulans? We can neither confirm nor deny that, which usually means yes. I almost smiled at that. Some things remain universal across every civilization. The horizon emitted another low vibration beneath the floor panels. Uneasy again. I rested my hand lightly against the console beside me. The ship felt colder now, more alert, like she recognized something hidden beneath the stars ahead. The Federation officer interrupted my thoughts moments later. Lost horizon. If you continue toward the silent sector, understand that multiple science teams have already vanished. I know. No distress signals were recovered. I know. The officer hesitated again before quietly asking, "Then why continue?" I looked back out across the endless darkness beyond the patrol ships. The stars ahead shimmered strangely, almost breathing. Because space doesn't distort itself without reason. Silence filled the channel after that, long enough for me to imagine officers exchanging nervous glances aboard their bridge. Finally, the transmission returned. "You should know. One of our long-range stations recently detected Borg transwarp signatures near the outer systems. Interesting. Not close, but close enough to frighten them. The Borg always move toward instability eventually, like predators smelling blood in dark water." The deeper the horizon traveled into the silent sector, the quieter space became. Not peaceful quiet, wrong quiet, the kind that settles over places where too many things have vanished too quickly. Long-range scans showed fragments of abandoned navigation routes drifting across subspace like ghosts. Trade paths that no longer connected properly. Patrol corridors ending in empty coordinates, entire mapped systems carrying conflicting positions across Federation databases. Even the stars ahead looked unstable now, slightly displaced, as if space itself had begun folding inward around unseen fractures. I spent most of the next cycle alone inside the observation deck, while the horizon glided silently through the outer boundary. No music, no engine roar, only the low hum of the ship beneath my feet and distant stars reflecting softly across the glass. Then another signal appeared. Short burst transmission, automatic, repeating endlessly. Federation vessel Corvin requesting emergency extraction. Static swallowed part of the message. Navigation impossible. The signal looped again, and again, and again. The timestamp attached to the distress call was 23 years old. I closed my eyes briefly after hearing it. 23 years, still transmitting, still waiting for help that never came. The horizon dimmed the deck lighting automatically while new scan results spread across the consoles. Debris fields, multiple, small, scattered across nearby systems. At first glance, they resembled standard collision events, damaged probes, destroyed relay stations, fragments of sensor arrays. But there was almost no evidence of actual combat, No weapons residue, no plasma scoring, no explosive fragmentation patterns. The ships here hadn't been attacked. They had simply fallen apart, like space itself rejected them. That thought stayed with me longer than I wanted. Hours later, the horizon finally located the first confirmed wreckage. A Federation long-range survey vessel drifting near a dark nebula. Half the ship remained intact. The other half looked twisted, unnaturally inward, like metal folded by impossible pressure. No life signs, no movement, only silence. I guided the horizon closer while weak emergency lights flickered across the dead vessel's surface. Ancient damage. Years old. But something about the wreck unsettled even the horizon. The ship's systems pulsed unevenly beneath my feet. Uneasy again. I activated a narrow band scan toward the drifting wreckage. Internal corridors appeared intact. Atmosphere remained stable in several sections. No bodies detected. No escape pods launched, which meant the crew either vanished on board or never had time to run. The docking bay doors were still open, waiting. I considered boarding briefly, then another signal interrupted the scans. Different voice this time, panicked. Navigation controls aren't responding. Static screamed across the speakers. The stars keep moving. Then silence. No timestamp attached. No vessel identification. Nothing. The horizon immediately froze the recording and replayed it twice. The voice sounded recent, too recent, which meant someone might still be alive somewhere inside the sector. Or something else was using the old frequencies. Outside the observation glass, the damaged survey ship drifted silently beside us, while dark clouds from the nebula swallowed nearby starlight. Beautiful view. Terrible place to die. I remained there for several minutes, watching the wreck rotate slowly against the darkness. Thinking. Listening. The Federation believes ships disappeared here because of unstable subspace conditions. Some suspected cloaked Romulan interference. Others feared Borg scouting activity beyond the patrol borders. But none of those explanations accounted for what I was seeing, because I had seen this pattern before. Long ago. Near dead gateway corridors. First, navigation instability, then signal echoes, then localized spatial collapse. Eventually, entire regions of space begin folding inward around fractured pathways buried beneath normal reality. Most civilizations mistake the symptoms for natural anomalies. Federation command vessels waited near the edge of the silent sector like nervous sentries guarding the mouth of a graveyard. They never crossed too deeply anymore. That alone told me the situation was worse than their reports admitted. A secure transmission reached the horizon several hours later. Different voice this time, older, controlled. This is Commander Hale aboard the Federation vessel Meridian. The man sounded exhausted beneath the professionalism. We would like permission to speak directly. Interesting phrasing. Not submit for inspection, speak directly. They were being careful around the horizon now. I opened the channel. The commander appeared moments later across the cockpit display. Gray uniform, sharp eyes, the expression of a man sleeping too little for too long. Behind him, the bridge of the Meridian glowed softly in blue light while officers moved silently between holographic displays. "You mentioned the disappearances before we informed you of them," Hale said calmly. "I hear things. No civilian hears things this quickly." Fair point. Outside the cockpit, the distorted stars shimmered faintly against the darkness beyond the Meridian's formation. Commander Hale studied me carefully before continuing. "We believe an unknown power may be operating inside the sector. Romulans. They've shown unusual interest in nearby systems. Because they're frightened." That answer caught him slightly off guard. The commander leaned closer toward the screen. "You believe the Romulans are afraid?" "Everyone here is afraid." Even through the display, I could see the truth settle quietly across his expression after hearing that, because he knew I was right. The Federation feared the unknown. The Romulans feared losing control of their borders, and somewhere beyond the mapped systems, something ancient was moving again beneath reality itself. Commander Hale finally spoke again. "There have also been unconfirmed Borg sightings beyond the outer systems." Unconfirmed, meaning they had seen evidence, but not enough to admit publicly. "Scouts?" I asked. "Possibly." That worried me. The Borg ignore most isolated regions unless something valuable exists nearby. Ancient technology attracts them quickly, especially technology capable of reshaping space itself. The commander continued speaking while star charts shifted across displays behind him. 3 patrol vessels disappeared during the last cycle. One vanished less than 12 minutes after reporting visual contact with an unidentified structure. That got my attention immediately. "What kind of structure?" "We don't know." The hesitation in his voice told me they knew more than they were sharing. "Commander," I said quietly, "what did your crew actually see?" The bridge behind him became silent. Then Hale answered carefully. "A doorway." Cold silence settled across the cockpit after that. Not because the answer surprised me, because of how quickly things were progressing. The horizon emitted another deep vibration beneath the floor panels. Uneasy again. Commander Hale noticed my expression change immediately. "You know something about this sector?" "Yes." "Then tell me." I stared quietly at the drifting stars beyond the viewport before answering. "Have your scientists noticed the signal delays yet?" The commander frowned slightly. "What delays?" "Messages arriving late, navigation coordinates shifting after transmission, sensor echoes arriving before the original scans." The silence on the Meridian's bridge told me everything they had noticed, and that meant the fractures were spreading faster now. "What is causing it?" Hale asked quietly. I looked back toward the dark heart of the silent sector, then answered carefully. "Something buried beneath subspace is trying to reconnect." The signal began repeating exactly 17 minutes after the dead star reappeared, weak at first, barely recognizable beneath layers of interference, then suddenly clear. "Federation vessel Meridian, respond immediately." I froze the transmission and replayed it twice through the Horizon systems. The voice belonged to a woman, calm, professional, trying very hard not to sound afraid. "Navigation has failed completely." Static burst violently across the recording. The stars are changing positions. The message distorted again before stabilizing. Then came the part that unsettled me most. We can still see the doorway. The transmission ended there. No screams, no alarms, just silence. I checked the timestamp attached to the signal. 3 hours into the future. That got my attention immediately. The horizon dimmed the cockpit lighting automatically while scan data rolled across the displays in pale blue waves. Subspace distortions had intensified throughout the sector. Localized temporal drift now appeared near several of the missing systems. That explained the signal, or part of it. When gateway corridors fracture incorrectly, time doesn't always move consistently near the openings. Messages arrive early. Echoes repeat before events occur. Sometimes entire ships vanish into unstable pathways and return years later believing only minutes passed. Most never return at all. Outside the observation glass, the silent sector stretched endlessly across the darkness ahead, while distant stars flickered unnaturally, like reflections moving beneath black water. Then another transmission suddenly erupted through the speakers without warning. "Please," static screamed violently. "Don't let it open." Then silence returned instantly. No ship identification, no source location, nothing. I replayed the final words again through the cockpit. The voice carried genuine terror beneath the distortion, not panic, recognition. Whoever transmitted that message understood exactly what they had encountered. Long-range scans suddenly shifted again moments later. A vessel appeared briefly near the edge of the nebula. Federation design, heavy cruiser class, drifting without power. I zoomed the external displays toward the contact while the horizon adjusted course automatically. The ship looked ancient, scarred, half the hull darkened from old damage. Yet the vessel still moved slowly through the void as if following some invisible current beneath normal space. Then the identification marker finally resolved across the console. FSV Archimedes. Impossible. The Archimedes disappeared 19 years earlier. Yet there it was, still drifting, still intact. Then another signal reached the cockpit speakers. This time, the voice sounded perfectly clear. "Captain." I felt the temperature inside the cockpit drop slightly after hearing that, because I recognized the voice immediately. And the man speaking had died a very long time ago. "Turn back." I should have left the Archimedes drifting in the dark. A smarter man would have. But curiosity has destroyed more civilizations than war ever could. The horizon sealed the docking corridor behind me with a low metallic echo, while emergency lights flickered weakly along the abandoned cruiser's interior. Cold air drifted through the hallway, dry, still, untouched for decades. At least, that's what it should have been. But the ship didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, like the crew had simply stepped away moments earlier. Dim Federation markings lined the corridor walls beneath layers of age, while emergency power pulsed unevenly through failing systems overhead. Somewhere deeper inside the vessel, metal creaked softly. Not movement, just the sound old ships make when they spend too long drifting between stars. I moved slowly through the corridor, while the horizon maintained a secure link behind me. The farther I traveled into the Archimedes, The stranger the ship became. Clocks frozen at different times, display panels showing conflicting dates, entire sections carrying no dust at all while others looked centuries old. Temporal instability, definitely, and getting worse. I entered the central observation deck several minutes later. That's when I realized something was deeply wrong. The stars outside the observation glass were moving, not drifting naturally, shifting, slowly rearranging themselves across the darkness beyond the ship. I stood motionless for several seconds, watching constellations physically change position before my eyes. Impossible movement. Entire star systems sliding gradually across space like reflections disturbed beneath water. No Federation science team was prepared for this. No civilization ever is. Because gateway fractures don't simply bend space. Eventually, they bend reality around the pathways themselves. The emergency lights flickered again. Then every monitor inside the observation deck activated simultaneously. Static flooded dozens of screens at once before stabilizing into fragmented recordings from the missing crew. Scientists arguing, officers shouting over distorted comms, navigation teams desperately recalculating star positions. Then, finally, panic. One recording showed a Federation officer staring through the observation glass while stars twisted unnaturally outside the ship. "They're changing," the man sounded terrified. "The stars are moving around us." Static swallowed the rest. Another recording activated immediately afterward. A woman this time. Exhausted. Crying quietly while alarms echoed somewhere behind her. "We found something inside subspace." Her image distorted heavily across the failing screen. A structure. Then the recording glitched violently. Not glitched. Shifted. For half a second, the screen displayed something else entirely. A massive circular shape suspended in darkness beyond the stars. Ancient, endless, awake. Then the image vanished. I stared silently at the dead monitor for several moments after that, because I recognized what I had seen immediately. A gateway corridor anchor, not fully open, but forming. That should have been impossible. Most known gateway systems collapsed centuries ago, after the old drifter wars. Entire civilizations died sealing them. Others vanished, trying to control them. The surviving pathways eventually buried themselves beneath dead space where nobody would find them again. Or at least, that was the plan. A sudden metallic sound echoed somewhere deeper inside the cruiser. Footsteps. Slow. Uneven. I turned immediately toward the darkened hallway beyond the observation deck while the emergency lights dimmed lower. Another step. Closer now. The horizon transmitted a warning pulse through my wrist console from the docking corridor. Something aboard the Archimedes was moving. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway ahead. Silence followed. Then a voice quietly emerged from the darkness. "You shouldn't be here." Old voice, weak, human. A figure slowly stepped into the failing emergency lights moments later. Federation uniform, gray hair, thin from years aboard the drifting ship, but alive, somehow. The man studied me silently for several seconds before speaking again. "You came from outside the sector?" "Yes." His eyes lowered slightly after hearing that, almost relieved. "How long has it been?" he asked quietly. I hesitated briefly before answering. 19 years. The old officer closed his eyes, not shocked, just tired, like part of him already knew. "We tried to leave," he said softly. The stars kept changing. Behind him, the observation glass reflected shifting constellations across the darkened deck, while distant systems continued drifting unnaturally beyond the ship. "What happened here?" I asked. The officer stared silently out toward the moving stars. The old officer refused to leave the Archimedes. I understood that. Some people spend too long drifting through broken space before the outside universe stops feeling real to them. He sat quietly beside the observation glass while distorted stars continued shifting slowly across the darkness beyond the ship, watching them, almost listening to them. "The station caused it," he finally said after several minutes of silence. "What station?" His tired eyes lowered slightly. "Research Outpost, Theta 6. I recognized the designation immediately from Federation patrol maps, a long-range subspace observatory near the center of the Silent Sector, officially abandoned 12 years earlier after communication stopped completely. Unofficially, the Federation never truly stopped monitoring it. They discovered something beneath subspace, the officer continued quietly. At first, they believed it was a naturally occurring corridor. "Gateway energy," I said. The old officer slowly looked toward me after hearing that word. Interesting. The Federation hadn't used that term publicly. "Your people know about them?" he asked carefully. "Some of us." Not entirely true. Very few civilizations still remembered the gateways properly anymore. Most surviving records were destroyed long ago during the Collapse Wars. Even the word itself had faded into myth across most galaxies. The officer looked back toward the drifting stars outside the glass. The station believed they found a stable pathway. Did they? No. His answer came immediately, no hesitation at all. "We opened something unfinished." That bothered me, because unfinished gateway corridors are far more dangerous than active ones. Stable pathways follow structure, rules, direction. Fractured pathways behave more like wounds inside reality itself, unpredictable, hungry. The horizon transmitted another low pulse through my wrist console from the docking corridor. Urgent this time. Scans from outside the cruiser suddenly filled the display across my arm. 3 Federation vessels had crossed the patrol boundary, Commander Hale among them. Too late. They were moving toward the station now, toward Theta 6. I closed the console slowly, while the old officer studied my expression carefully. "They're going there," he said quietly. "Yes. They shouldn't. No." The observation deck lights flickered violently overhead. Then suddenly every screen aboard the Archimedes activated again. Not static this time, live feeds. Federation ships appeared across dozens of displays as the cruisers advanced cautiously through the distorted sector ahead. Blue running lights drifted across endless darkness while sensor telemetry flooded the monitors. The station finally appeared moments later. Even after all my years traveling between galaxies, Theta 6 unsettled me immediately. The research station drifted near the center of a dark subspace fracture surrounded by distorted starlight. Massive structure, partially Federation design, but wrapped around something far older. Ancient black metallic shapes extended beneath the station itself like buried bones emerging through newer construction. The Federation hadn't discovered a gateway, They built directly on top of one. That explained everything. Commander Hale's voice echoed faintly through the Archimedes speakers moments later. All vessels maintain formation. The transmission crackled heavily. Oh, subspace distortion levels rising. The stars surrounding Theta 6 shimmered unnaturally while sections of space near the station folded inward like reflections twisting across broken glass. Then something appeared behind the station. At first, it looked like darkness, just absence between stars. But slowly, a shape began forming inside the fracture. Massive, circular, ancient. The unfinished corridor, even damaged. The structure stretched across impossible distances beyond normal space. The Federation ships immediately slowed, their crews finally seeing what destroyed the silent sector. One of the officers aboard Hale's cruiser spoke through the transmission channel moments later. "Commander," fear filled the man's voice now. "What is that?" Nobody answered him, because no modern civilization had words for what they were seeing. The old officer beside me stared silently at the screens, while pale light from the forming corridor reflected across his exhausted face. "We thought it was dead," he whispered. "That's the problem with old gateways," I said quietly. "They rarely stay buried forever." Then, the station itself activated. Lights erupted across the ancient structure beneath Theta 6, while violent energy waves rolled outward through the sector. The Federation ships shook hard across the monitors. Warning alarms flooded every channel simultaneously. Stars vanished completely behind the expanding distortion field. The Federation ships should have retreated immediately. A smarter civilization would have. But curiosity and hope are dangerous things when mixed together. Commander Hale's cruiser moved slowly toward Theta 6, while the unfinished corridor expanded behind the station, like a wound tearing open across the stars. The distortion field surrounding the structure pulsed unevenly through subspace. Every pulse bent nearby light unnaturally. Stars stretched, shifted, disappeared completely for seconds before returning slightly out of position. Even the horizon struggled to stabilize navigation now. That worried me. Very little unsettles the horizon. Across the observation deck screens, Federation officers scrambled between consoles, while alarms echoed throughout their ships. One science officer transmitted new scan data moments later. "Commander, energy readings are increasing exponentially." Another voice interrupted immediately after. "We're detecting impossible mass signatures inside the distortion." Impossible. Civilizations love using that word right before reality proves otherwise. The old officer beside me slowly stood while pale light from the unfinished corridor reflected across the observation glass. "We tried to shut it down," he whispered. "What happened?" His expression darkened. "It answered us." Cold silence settled across the deck after hearing that. Because gateways were never simple machines, they were pathways. Living systems connected across distances most species were never meant to reach. Commander Hale's voice returned through the transmission channels moments later. "All vessels hold position." Smart. Too close, and the distortion would consume them. Too far, and they'd lose sensor resolution entirely. The Federation cruisers formed a defensive line around Theta 6, while smaller support ships retreated toward safer coordinates. Even from the Archimedes one, I could see tension spreading across every vessel. Nobody aboard those ships truly understood what they were facing, but instinct told them they were staring into something ancient, something wrong. Then the station transmitted a signal, not Federation code, not Romulan, not Borg, older. The sound rolled through every communication channel simultaneously, like distant metallic thunder beneath water. The old officer beside me closed his eyes immediately after hearing it. "That's what we found," he whispered. The horizon pulsed hard beneath my feet through the docking link. Urgent now. Then the stars around Theta 6 vanished completely. Every monitor aboard the Archimedes went black for nearly 3 full seconds. No stars, no ships, nothing. Then reality returned violently. The Federation vessels reappeared scattered across different positions, while panic erupted through their communication channels. "Navigation failure. We've lost visual tracking. Multiple ships displaced." One cruiser appeared thousands of kilometers from its original coordinates. Another vanished entirely from local scans. Commander Hale fought to regain control across the transmissions, while the unfinished corridor expanded farther behind the station. And for the first time, I saw beyond it. Ancient structures stretched endlessly beneath dead stars inside the fractured pathway, while enormous shadows drifted slowly through the darkness beyond. Ruins, machines, fragments of civilizations long erased from existence. The old gateway network. Most people imagine gateways as doors. They were never that. The corridors connected entire layers of reality modern civilizations were never meant to reach. The old officer suddenly grabbed my arm. "Look." I followed his gaze toward the center of the unfinished corridor. Something was emerging from the distortion. At first, it resembled another ship. Dark silhouette, massive, but wrong somehow. Its shape shifted constantly against fractured starlight like it couldn't fully exist inside normal space. Federation sensors locked onto it, then failed, then locked again. Commander Hale's voice returned sharply through the channel. "All ships, prepare defensive formation." Fear finally reached his voice now, because whatever was emerging from the unfinished pathway did not belong inside their universe anymore. The thing emerging from the corridor moved without engines, no visible propulsion. It simply appeared closer each time the distortion pulsed. Massive dark shapes unfolded beneath fractured starlight, while Federation ships repositioned defensively around Theta 6. Commander Hale reacted immediately. "All vessels hold formation. Weapons remain offline unless ordered." Interesting. Even now. The Federation still hoped this could become first contact instead of war. The distorted vessel continued, drifting beyond the unfinished corridor, while subspace around it bent unnaturally. Sensor locks failed constantly. Visual readings contradicted themselves every few seconds. One moment the object appeared kilometers wide. The next, much larger. The horizon pulsed sharply beneath the docking corridor. Warning. Not fear this time. Recognition. That unsettled me more than anything else, because the horizon remembered things older than I did. Commander Hale's voice echoed through the transmissions moments later. Unknown vessel. Identify yourself. No response, only static. Then the ancient signal returned again through every communication channel simultaneously. Metallic, layered, wrong. Federation translation systems attempted decoding automatically. Most failed instantly, but fragments still appeared across the screens. Pathway unsealed return, vector active. The old drifter language. No Federation system should have translated even fragments of it. That meant the corridor itself was adapting to local communications. Learning, very bad sign. Panic spread quickly through the Federation channels. Commander, what does that mean? Unknown. Energy levels still increasing. We're losing navigational alignment. Outside the observation glass, one of the smaller Federation vessels suddenly drifted sideways, unnaturally. Not moving, sliding. Like space itself shifted around the ship. Then it vanished completely. No explosion, no debris, gone. Several officers shouted across the transmissions immediately afterward, while Commander Hale fought to stabilize the collapsing formation. The corridor expanded farther behind Theta 6, and deep inside the fractured pathway, more lights appeared, additional shapes moving beneath the darkness beyond. The old officer looked toward me slowly after seeing them. There's more than one. Yes. Fear finally settled across his face completely, because now he understood what they had awakened. Not a doorway, a network. The Federation ships began charging weapons moments later. Blue energy gathered across the cruisers while targeting systems attempted locking onto the drifting object beyond the corridor. It wouldn't help. Modern weapons barely interact correctly with fractured gateway constructs. But frightened civilizations always reach for weapons first. Commander Hale transmitted directly to the horizon again. You knew this would happen. Yes. Then tell me how to stop it. I stared silently toward the growing corridor while the distorted vessel continued emerging slowly into normal space. The answer was simple, but civilizations rarely enjoy hearing simple answers. You shut the station down, I said quietly. Hale's expression tightened instantly. The station controls every stabilization field in the sector, and it's feeding the corridor. If we deactivate Theta 6, we lose containment completely. No, I answered softly. You lose your illusion of containment. Silence followed. Heavy silence. Because deep down, he already knew I was right. The Federation began evacuating the outer patrol line less than 12 minutes later. Support vessels withdrew first, science ships, medical frigates, long-range sensor platforms. Everything moved away from Theta 6 except Commander Hale's cruiser group. They stayed, holding position between the unfinished corridor and the rest of Federation space. Brave people, foolish people. Sometimes there's very little difference. Outside the cockpit, the unfinished pathway dominated the darkness now. Ancient structures stretched endlessly beneath fractured space, while impossible shadows drifted deep inside the corridor beyond visible reality. And the thing emerging from the gateway continued watching, waiting. It hadn't attacked, hadn't spoken again. It simply observed the Federation ships surrounding the station like something remembering a world long forgotten. Commander Hale opened one final transmission as the horizon approached Theta 6. You intend to destroy the station. Yes, the corridor could destabilize. It already has. If you're wrong. I looked silently toward the growing fracture beyond the stars, then answered softly. If I'm wrong, none of this matters anyway. The commander didn't reply after that, because there was nothing left to say. The horizon accelerated toward the station moments later, while warning alarms echoed across every Federation channel. The ancient structure beneath Theta 6 pulsed brighter now. Awake. The Federation built their station directly into the outer shell of the buried corridor anchor without understanding what it truly was. Their systems fed energy into the pathway for years, slowly reconnecting the network piece by piece, and now the old gateway was trying to finish opening itself. The distorted vessel beyond the corridor moved again. Closer this time. Massive black shapes shifted beneath fractured starlight, while impossible geometry folded across its surface, like reality struggled to contain it. Even the Federation cruisers stopped targeting it eventually. Instinct finally overpowered protocol. Because every living thing near the silent sector understood the truth now. That thing did not belong here anymore. The horizon pierced the outer station perimeter seconds later. Emergency lights flooded across Theta 6, while evacuation sirens echoed through the structure. Most of the station crew had already fled. Not all of them. Some scientists remained behind, desperately trying to preserve their research. Civilizations always struggle to let go of dangerous discoveries once they taste them. The station core appeared across the cockpit displays moments later. Massive reactor, Federation technology wrapped around ancient gateway machinery buried beneath the structure. Beautiful engineering, catastrophic idea. I initiated the overload sequence quietly, while the horizon locked itself directly into the station systems. Then the station core ruptured. Light erupted across the silent sector like a second sun. The gateway anchor shattered beneath Theta 6, while violent energy waves tore through fractured subspace in every direction. Stars vanished completely. Reality folded inward. Then, silence. Absolute silence. The horizon drifted alone through darkness for several seconds while systems struggled to recalibrate. No stars, no transmissions, nothing. Then slowly, space returned. The Federation cruisers reappeared across local scans first. Damaged, scattered, but alive. Theta 6 was gone. The unfinished corridor collapsed behind it, and the ancient vessel beyond the pathway had vanished back into the darkness between realities. For now. Commander Hale's battered cruiser appeared across the viewport several minutes later, while emergency lights flickered weakly across its damaged hull. The transmission channel opened one final time. Neither of us spoke at first. Sometimes survival itself says enough. Finally, the commander looked toward me quietly and asked, "What was that thing?" I stared silently toward the dark space where the corridor once existed, then answered honestly,